Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again to the Stoner Report. I'm Marius Stoner here for Cannabis Culture Magazine with this week's marijuana news. I'm sorry I have not been around for a while. I have another job now. I have two jobs. It's hard to make ends meet here in Vancouver. So I've just been getting used to that and acclimatized to that, and so I'm back now. I'm going to read the news for you. It's quite sunny today in Vancouver. Just going to double check the sound levels. How's the sound levels for everybody there in chat? Does it sound okay there in chat, everyone? Bueller? Okay, looks okay then. All right, so let's start with the news here. Oops, okay, just one sec. Adjust this slightly. Perfect. Okay. Bob Marley branded pot is here, but would he be fuming? The latest capitalist product named after a rebellious icon. On the cover of 1973's Catch a Fire album, there's a photo of Bob Marley that's become an icon for the transcendent powers of smoking marijuana. The reggae master squints into the camera, a joint the size of a stovepipe sagging from his lips. Marley was the world's most famous proponent of smoking the sacred Rastafarian herb, so it was probably just a matter of time before his family placed his name on a brand of cannabis products. The brand, called Marley Natural, will reportedly be available late next year and consist of cannabis-infused lotions, creams, accessories, and perhaps, most appropriately, fine cannabis, or what the website terms some of Bob's Jamaican favorites. Not surprisingly, the announcement of the brand's debut has caused a stir both in outside and the partaking community. Excited about this brand and products, tweeted successful stoners. Less certain is what Marley, who died in 1981, well before the cash show age of celebrity branding and increasingly legal pot, would have thought of this latest venture. Marley's daughter, Sidella, told the BBC her father would have loved it. My dad would be so happy to see people understanding the healing power of the herb, she said. Well, maybe. Marley Natural is being funded by Privateer Holdings, a Seattle-based venture firm whose executives hail from sleek corporate megaliths such as Silicon Valley Bank, Cisco Systems, and Wells Fargo. By most accounts, Marley himself was far closer to revolutionary socialism than venture capitalism. Veterans may gain easier access to medical marijuana. A bill introduced in Congress would allow the Department of Veterans Affairs doctors to recommend a medical marijuana for their patients. The Veterans Equal Access Act, introduced Thursday by Reps. Earl Blumenauer and Dana Rohrabacher, with 10 bipartisan co-sponsors, would lift a ban on VA doctors giving opinions or recommendations about medical marijuana to veterans who live in the states where medical marijuana is permitted. Post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury are just as damaging and harmful as any injuries that are visible from the outside, Blumauer said. Sometimes even more so because of the devastating effect they can have on a veteran's family. We should be allowing these wounded warriors access to medicine that will help them survive and thrive, including medical marijuana, not treating them like criminals and forcing them into the shadows. It's shameful. Nearly 30% of veterans who served in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars suffered from PTSD and depression, according to a 2012 report from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Some scientists have suggested that marijuana may help PTSD symptoms, which can include anxiety, flashbacks, and depression. In a recent study, patients who smoked cannabis saw an average of 75% reduction in PTSD symptoms. A clinical trial needs to be done to see what proportion and what kind of PTSD patients benefit with either cannabis or the main active ingredients of cannabis, said Dr. George Greer, who was involved in the study. Marijuana shops seek holiday surge with Green Friday. Pot sellers are gearing up for the first holiday season since recreational marijuana was legalized in Colorado. At Grass Station, a shop in Denver that sells $7 joints, $21 chocolate bars, and even an $11 lip balm, the goal is to get the same kind of post-Thanksgiving sales bump as department stores or clothing chains. Some pot sellers have even renamed the traditional Black Friday shopping day Green Friday. We have really high expectations, said Grass Station owner Ryan Fox. Now we've got the legal means for people to give marijuana as a gift, and that's never really been something that was feasible in the past. The shop expects a line at the door at 8 a.m. on November 28th, the day after Thanksgiving, as tokers try to get their fingers on ration specials. 16 customers will get an ounce of weed for $50 that generally sells for 5 times that amount. 60 joints will go for $1 each. The price of a $30 vape gun cartridge will be cut in half. Colorado's almost 300 legal marijuana sellers have more to worry about than just enticing customers with discounts. The industry is grappling with 500 pages of regulation and myriad marketing restrictions. There's also concern that the federal government still sees the trade as illegal, even if officials are looking the other way for now. Amsterdam Cup New Rules. No dabs or sharing pot. This happened, of course, on Monday. The Amsterdam Cup was shut down on Sunday, its first day, for fear that all participants would be arrested, according to organizer High Times magazine. The mag said the mayor's office had issues with the legality of the Cannabis Cup. This morning, we were informed that if we were to proceed with the Cannabis Cup Expo, the event would be shut down and all the participants would be arrested, High Times wrote on Sunday. In the 26 years of the Cannabis Cup, there has never been any health or safety issues, nor has there been any lawlessness on the part of the attendees. In the wake of the shutdown, which is temporary according to High Times, the magazine published 4 new rules to appease the powers that be. 1. Expo attendees and those not working the booths will only be allowed up to 5 grams of personal cannabis or hash. Security will be on hand to search bags and backpacks and will confiscate amounts over 5 grams. Solvent-based cannabis extracts are not legal under Dutch law. You will not be allowed to bring shatter, wax, or torches into the expo. Vendors are not allowed to distribute or share cannabis or cannabis-related products with the attendees. The mayor's office is strictly enforcing this no cannabis distribution law. To smoke at the expo, you will need to bring your own. The mayor releases a plan for medical marijuana in Seattle. Mayor Ed Murray's office outlined its plan for the medical marijuana industry this afternoon. The plan calls for licensing or recreational and medical marijuana businesses and creates regulations for medical marijuana providers. The mayor's plan would establish a regulatory system for medical similar to that of the state's recreational system, in that it sets standards for testing, packaging, and advertising. It will require criminal background checks for business owners and require businesses to allow inspections by the city. The new system calls for 2 classes of collective gardens. Class 1 collective gardens would operate with dispensaries. Class 2 collective gardens would not and aren't subject to many of the more restrictive requirements such as testing. The Class 1 dispensaries would have to be 500 feet from child care centers, schools, parks, libraries, transit centers, and recreation centers, but there won't appear to be limits for Class 2 gardens, which would only allow 45 plants on each parcel. Class 1 collective gardens are required to test for potency, including CBD, as well as pesticides, mold, fungus, and heavy metals. Pesticides and heavy metals tests are typically more expensive than the testing state's Liquor Control Board requires for recreational marijuana. The outline also calls for a separate processing license that establishes packaging and requirements for edibles and adopts the state's Liquor Control Board's rules for concentrates. Although state-licensed recreational producers would also be licensed by the city, they would not have to adhere to any special requirements. Supporters of medical marijuana for PTSD patients speak out. People pushing for research into the effectiveness of marijuana as a treatment for mental illness spoke out. Earlier this year, the federal government authorized the University of Arizona to lead a study of medical marijuana for veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. What's happening, though, is people are all living in fear. Fear of the word marijuana, said Arizona Senator Robert Meza. So far, this study has not moved forward, and a bill that would have authorized state funding for research failed to advance at the legislature. It is our understanding that all the three universities have rejected this study and put this study in a precarious position, said Sean Keenan. Advocates say they have private funding, but the study still hasn't been given the green light. Okay. So the Amsterdam Cannabis Cup stayed open, but the crowd frustrated. Don't tell High Times the Amsterdam Cannabis Cup is cancelled, shut down, or in any way shuttered. Determined to proceed with the 27th annual event, organizers opened the Milk Weg on Monday morning as it were business as usual at the venue. Passes, tote bags, and t-shirts were doled out to approximately 100 attendees of the opening seminar on curing and storage. Still, it's hard for many to recognize what's occurring as a cannabis cup in the traditional sense of the event, after organizers turned away attendees on Sunday's first day of the cup and issued strict new rules on cannabis use and possession because the mayor's office had issues with the legality of the proceedings. This was perhaps the most pronounced, as James Loud of Loud Seas was interrupted Monday by a staff member who reminded the crowd that all smoking needed to take place in a designated lounge. "Yeah, go smoke," laughed Loud as he returned to the microphone. Absent the lavish exhibition booths, eager competitors, and of course the free-flowing cannabis, High Times is banking on a lineup of cannabis cult figures like Canadian Prince of Pop Mark Emery, Normal founder Keith Stroop, and a birthday party for hash legend Mila Jansen to keep the modest crowd entertained. Not everyone stuck around, however. Okay, so it's 2:20, and I'm going to stop now for a bit and roll a joint in honor of 420 because it's 420 somewhere. You guys know the drill. Come on. Yeah, it's good to be back here. So I'm working at a dispensary. I'm not going to mention which one because for the privacy concern of the people involved. But yeah, it's nice to be out on the front lines, meeting patients and hearing about what's happening with them. Just good to meet new people. Yeah. Here I work mostly on the computer. It's kind of hard sometimes to get out. Yeah. So yeah, I'm keeping this job though too. So I have 2 jobs now. So I will be back. Hey, 28 Dabs, nice to see you. I see you lurking too. Okay, so I got some good stuff here. Tastes really good. I'll show you about it in a sec. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention the weather. It's beautiful outside. Chilly but beautiful, nice and sunny and happy. So hopefully everybody out there is having a great day. So as you probably know, Jeremiah, Jody, and Mark are in Amsterdam enjoying the Cannabis Cup, or at least trying to, and they should be back next week. We're starting to decorate for Christmas, so it's getting that time again. I guess today is one of the last days of the month. And yeah, sorry for the lack of notice for the show. I will get the show up for next week. All those sort of things I will do. That's right. So here you go. Here's the bud that I'm smoking. I'm not sure what it is. I always forget. Yeah, it's pretty nice. It smells really good. And it tastes really interesting, actually. I've never quite tasted a kush like this. It must be a mix of something. I think it's a sativa indica cross. Yeah, so there's my civil disobedience for the show. And now, back to the show. Alcohol is far more deadly than cannabis, former UK minister says. Alcohol is a much greater threat to people's health than cannabis, former Home Office Minister Norman Baker has warned, saying its dangers are being underplayed. Pointing to figures that show there were only 13 deaths related to cannabis in the last year compared with more than 7,000 caused by alcohol, the Liberal Democrat MP says there is a hysteria over drug use in the UK. Mr. Baker, who resigned from Home Office after saying the experience of working with Theresa May was like walking through mud, said he had been shocked to learn that the extent of Britain's drinking culture during his year as crime prevention minister. His battles included trying to shut down a J.D. Wetherspoon motorway pub on the M40, a move allegedly blocked by Number 10, calling on shops to stop irresponsible alcoholic drinks promotions. New bill would allow the VA to recommend medical marijuana for patients. Arguing that medical marijuana may help wounded warriors with anxiety and stress disorders to survive and thrive, Representative Earl Blumenauer and Representative Dana Rohrabacher have introduced legislation that would allow the Department of Veterans Affairs doctors to recommend the drugs for some patients. The Veterans Equal Access Act would challenge the VA's policy that forbids doctors from consulting about medical pot use. Earlier this month, the Washington Post reported about the issue. We should be allowing these wounded warriors access to the medicine that will help them survive and thrive, including medical marijuana, not treating them like criminals and forcing them into the shadows, said Blumenauer in a statement. The federal government classifies marijuana as a Schedule I drug, the same as heroin and LSD, deeming that it has no acceptable medical use and a high potential for abuse. That means that VA, which runs the largest network of hospitals and health clinics in the country, cannot prescribe pot as a treatment, even for veterans who live in a state where medical marijuana is legal. VA says that its physicians and chronic pain specialists are prohibited from recommending and prescribing medical marijuana for PTSD or other pain-related issues. Medical staff are also prohibited from completing paperwork required to enroll in state marijuana programs because they are federal employees who must comply with federal law, said Gina Jackson, a VA spokeswoman. Connecticut is pleased to expand illness for medical marijuana. Patients and their advocates pleaded with state panel of doctors Wednesday to expand Connecticut's medical marijuana program to include additional medical conditions beyond those currently allowed by state law. Gentlemen, you ought to let the patients have this stuff, Jay Jakovich of Norwalk, who has psoriasis, told the program's board of physicians. Whoever wants it should be able to have it. People are suffering, and I know that you're on this board because you recognize that, so let's deliver it, he said. This is the first wave of petitions seeking an expansion of the medical marijuana program. Connecticut's 6 marijuana dispensaries started selling the drug on September 22nd to about 3,000 registered patients who can buy marijuana in the state. The program's Board of Physicians is reviewing petitions to add severe psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, sickle cell disease, Tourette's disorder, and post-laminectomy syndrome with chronic radiculopathy. Okay, sorry about that. Chronic pain after back surgery. To the list of qualifying maladies. A hearing Wednesday morning drew fewer than a dozen people who spoke to the board in a government meeting room. The medical marijuana program is administered by the State Department of Consumer Protection. The department is accepting written materials, petitions, and testimony from the public until December 12th. Did Ferguson prosecutors focus unduly on marijuana? Could marijuana really have contributed to the deadly confrontation between Michael Brown and Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson? With the record in grand jury investigation now open to the public, commentators and analysts are poring over the details for explanations as to why the grand jury decided not to indict Mr. Wilson for shooting Brown. The drug angle has garnered particular attention and from some corners criticism. According to the toxicology report conducted by the government, Brown had 12 nanograms of tetrahydrocannabinol, an active ingredient of marijuana, in his blood when he died. The evidence was presented to the grand jury, and Assistant County Prosecutor Kathy Alizadeh interviewed the county's toxicologist as to the potential implications. He told the grand jury that tests indicated Brown had smoked marijuana within a couple of hours of his death, and it could have hallucinogenic effects if taken in a high enough dose. Okay, hang on just one sec. There it is. The Florida medical marijuana supporters will try again on the 2016 ballot. The group that put medical marijuana on the Florida ballot this year and fell just short of passing it intends to launch a new constitutional amendment campaign shortly. We're swiftly mobilizing a new petition push to get medical marijuana on the next general elections ballot, United Care Director Ben Pollara told supporters this week in a fundraising announcement. A constitutional amendment would not be necessary if the legislature approves medical marijuana by statute, but we cannot rely on that, Pollara said. We are going to pass a medical marijuana law in Florida by the end of 2016. Amendment 2, this year's version, gained 58% of the vote, just shy of the required 60%. It would have allowed patients with debilitating illnesses to possess pot with a doctor's recommendation. Pollara said in an interview that United for Care's lawyer is tweaking amendments to ballot language to bolster areas that opponents attacked. One section will say explicitly that minors cannot get pot without their parents' consent. Okay, and that's the news for this week. Thank you again for joining me. I will continue to do the news as much as I can, but I'm very busy these days, and I may miss one or two. Sorry. So yeah, don't forget, pot is the most advanced plant on the planet. We're going to use it to save ourselves and save the world. And let me just, I'm using a different program. Like my code was taken away for ManyCam, so I have to do a few things manually this week. So just gonna find our outro here. All right, yeah, that's it for me. I'm Marius Stoner for Cannabis Culture Magazine here at the BCMP Vapor Lounge, 307 West Hastings. Come down and visit us. Come shop at our store. Come do it all. Just do it here. All right. Okay, until next week. Take care.